Imani Jackson was 29 years old and exceptionally good at her job. As a marketing strategist for a rising tech firm in Colorado Springs, she spent her days navigating multi-million-dollar campaigns and analyzing complex data sets. She managed client expectations with a calm authority that belied her age. By every professional metric, she was a success. Her success, however, felt muted by her address. Imani lived in the guest house, a small but beautifully renovated cottage that stood in the shadow of her parents' sprawling main house. Robert and Eleanor Jackson's home was only 50 yards away across a patch of perfectly manicured lawn that Imani herself had helped pay for. She lived there under an arrangement. This was not charity. Imani transferred exactly $1,500 to her parents' bank account on the first of every month without fail. She called it rent when discussing it with colleagues. It sounded responsible, practical, a smart way to save money. But Imani knew the truth. It was not rent. It was the mortgage payment for the big house. She was quite literally paying for the roof over her parents' heads while trying desperately to save for her own. Her own roof was supposed to be shared with Marcus, her fiancé. Marcus was a man who believed in spreadsheets, 5-year plans, and mutual contribution. Their plan was currently stalled, waiting for her down payment fund to mature. Imani stared at her laptop screen, clicking refresh on her banking app for the third time, as if willpower alone could make the number change. It barely moved. Her savings account balance crawled upward with agonizing slowness, a tiny fraction of what her salary should have allowed. She let out a long, quiet sigh. The frustration was a familiar, bitter taste. She looked out the guest house window. Across the dark grass, the lights were on in the main house kitchen. Eleanor was probably making dinner, complaining about the cost of groceries. Robert was likely in the den, watching the news feed up. They were comfortable. She had made them comfortable. 29 years old, a senior strategist making 6 figures, and still living in her parents' backyard. The contradiction was a constant dull ache in her chest. She tried the old rationalization, the one she sometimes used on Marcus when he got quiet about their future. "It's a good deal," she would murmur to herself. "I'm helping them out and they're helping me save." It sounded so symbiotic, so mature, so familial, but the words felt hollow. Deep down she felt tethered. She was not a daughter being helped, she was a resource being managed. She was the convenient ATM, the reliable financial backbone that allowed the rest of the family to relax, to breathe, to live, without the pressure she felt every single day. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Marcus. "Saw another listing in the North End. We should check it out." A knot tightened in her stomach. Every dollar she sent to the big house was a dollar she was not putting toward their future. This arrangement was not just holding her back, it was holding them back. The guilt was heavy, a second mortgage on her conscience, and the first payment was due every single day. The disruption arrived 3 days later, not with a bang, but with the crunch of gravel under the tires of an expensive rideshare. Imani, reviewing a presentation slide in her guest house, heard the car door slam. She looked up just as her younger brother Malik sauntered toward the main house. He was 27 years old and moved with an unearned arrogance. He was not carrying a suitcase, but a sleek black designer duffel bag, the kind Imani knew cost at least 2 months of her mortgage payment. A wave of expensive cologne, sandalwood, and something sharp drifted across the yard, potent enough to reach her through her cracked window. He looked less like a man returning in defeat and more like a conquering hero. Imani's stomach tightened. She closed her laptop and walked the 50 yards to the big house, stepping inside just as the reunion was unfolding. Malik had dropped his bag in the foyer, scratching the hardwood floor her money had refinished. He was spinning a story for their parents. "The vibe in Denver was just toxic, you know," he was saying, gesturing broadly. "Management and I had creative differences. It was time to go." Imani knew what creative differences meant. A mutual friend in Denver had already told her the truth. Malik had been fired from his high-end bartending job for skimming cash from the register. Not a lot, just enough. Petty theft. As she watched him lie, the past flooded in sharp and suffocating. This was not a new scene. It was a rerun. She saw Malik at 19 years old calling home, his voice frantic about a fender bender that required $500 cash right now. Imani later found the concert ticket stubs in his jeans pocket while doing his laundry. She saw Malik at 22 losing his entire month's rent money on the way to the landlord. He had looked so ashamed. Robert and Eleanor had drained their emergency fund to cover it. The gambling app notifications on his unlocked phone told Imani the real story, and each time her parents had sighed, lectured him softly, and then looked to Imani to help stabilize the family finances. Robert and Eleanor always cleaned up his mess. The memory dissolved, leaving the present, which was no different. Eleanor rushed forward, her hands fluttering, tears already welling in her eyes. "Oh, Malik, my baby boy," she cried, pulling him into a hug as if he had returned from war, not from another failed attempt at basic responsibility. Robert, her father, was more reserved but just as damaging. He clapped Malik firmly on the shoulder. "It's okay, son. You're home." Robert said, his voice a low rumble of approval. "We'll figure it out. Family is for helping each other." Imani stood in the doorway, invisible, a chill spreading through her. She looked at Malik, who was already accepting her mother's embrace with a smug, satisfied look. She looked at her father, whose words echoed in the room. Family is for helping each other. The phrase landed on her like a physical weight. It sounded so noble, so right. But in this house, the words had a different translation. Family is for helping was a rule that only ever applied to Malik. For Imani, the rule was and had always been, family is for sacrificing. That night, Imani retreated to the guest house, the scene at the main house replaying in her mind. Malik's smugness, her mother's tears, her father's enabling words. She was trying to force her brain to focus on a work proposal when her phone lit up with Marcus's name. A picture of them smiling on a hike last fall. She answered, trying to inject a lightness into her voice that she did not feel. "Hey you," she said. "Hey babe. You will not believe this." Marcus's voice was crisp, energized. He was a financial analyst, a man who found beauty in logic and well-executed plans. "The listing on Oak Street, the one we loved but was just out of reach, it was just relisted. Price dropped by 20,000. Imani sat up straight. "What? Why?" "Previous buyers lost their financing. It's our shot, Imani. It's perfect. 3 bedrooms, the yard for the dog, we keep talking about good bones. The agent says they want a fast, clean offer. We need to act. Now." The air went out of her. The familiar cold knot of dread formed in her stomach, pushing aside the flicker of excitement. She stared at the bank account balance still open on her laptop. She did the math. She was still thousands short. "Imani," Marcus said, his tone shifting from excitement to patient concern. "You're quiet." I don't have the full down payment yet, Marcus." She said the words tasting like failure. "I'm still short, maybe in 6 more months." There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. It was not an angry sound. It was the sound of pure, logical frustration. "I know, babe, I know you're trying, but if you were not paying that $1,500 mortgage payment for your parents, we would have had this 3 months ago. We would have had it." He paused, and she knew what was coming next. "And now Malik is back. You told me. You know what that means, don't you? The arrangement is about to get more expensive. They are going to be hitting you up for his car payment, his phone bill, his bad luck." "It's my parents, Marcus," Imani said, her voice small, defensive. "I can't just let them lose their house. It's everything they have." "I am not telling you to let them lose their house," Marcus said, his voice firm but still gentle. "I am telling you that your arrangement is a set of handcuffs on both of us. I love you. I want to build a life with you. But you have to decide, Imani. You have to choose when our future gets to start." The call ended a few minutes later with a strained, "I love you too." Imani hung up and sat in the silence, the weight of his words pressing down on her. He was right. He was always right. His logic was infuriating because it was flawless. She was trapped between the family she was born into and the one she was trying to build. Her eyes drifted to a large empty mason jar on her bookshelf. Years ago, she had jokingly written the Malik Emergency Fund on a piece of tape and stuck it to the glass. It was a gag gift for herself, a place to throw spare change. She had called it her guilt jar. She looked at it now. It was empty, but it felt heavy. It was not a joke anymore. It was a prophecy. And with Malik sleeping soundly in her old bedroom in the main house, she knew with chilling certainty that her family was about to make a very large withdrawal. The first welcome home family dinner was that Sunday. Imani had tried to avoid it, but a terse text from her mother, "Don't be selfish, Imani. Your father is making ribs," had guilted her into walking across the lawn. The atmosphere in the dining room was thick. Eleanor had set the table with the good china, the kind reserved for special occasions, as if Malik's firing was a holiday. Imani sat in silence, pushing mashed potatoes around her plate. Malik, however, was holding court, talking with his mouth full, expansive about the scene in Denver. "I mean, you gotta look the part," he was saying, shrugging. "Everyone out there has style. I had to cop this new leather jacket, beautiful, real lambskin." He gestured to his phone. $800, but you gotta invest in your image, you know? $800. Imani tightened her grip on her fork. The number hung in the air. $800 was over half of her mortgage payment. It was the money she had denied herself for weekend trips with Marcus. She had cut back on morning coffee, resorting to the stale machine in the office break room just to save a few extra dollars. "Malik," Imani said, her voice cutting through his story. The table went silent. "You need to find a job." Malik blinked, his self-satisfied smirk faltering. "What did you say?" "You can't be shopping while you have no income." Imani continued, her voice level and cold. "We cannot keep bailing you out for your mistakes. You are 27 years old." Eleanor slammed her fork down. "Imani, that is enough." "No, Mom, it's not," Imani said, turning to her mother. "He is spending $800 on a jacket while he is unemployed and living off our parents whose bills I am helping to pay. He is going through a hard time." Eleanor snapped, her voice high with offense. "Family is for support." "Support is different from enabling," Imani said. "Daughter, stop," Robert said, his voice a low warning. He planted his hands on the table. "We are all in this boat together." The phrase struck Imani with physical force. All in this boat together. She looked around the table. She saw her parents, who were glaring at her with disappointment as if she were the problem. She looked at Malik, who had returned to his food, chewing angrily, refusing to look up. In this boat together, Imani thought, a hot surge of anger rising in her throat. "My boat is rowing with both arms as hard as I can just to stay afloat. My boat is dragging the deadweight anchor that is Malik, who refuses to even lift a finger. And you two are drilling holes in the bottom of my boat to make the anchor feel more comfortable." She realized it with a painful crystalline clarity. Malik was not passively irresponsible. He was actively refusing responsibility. He knew, he had always known, that if he refused long enough, if he acted pathetic enough, someone else would carry the weight. And that someone was always her. The silence stretched. Finally, Eleanor cleared her throat, the atmosphere shifting. "Well," she said, forcing a bright tone. "Anyway, your job is going well, isn't it, honey? You always do so well." "That's right," Robert added, nodding. "You're lucky you can save so much. You were always the responsible one." Imani felt the trap closing. They were compliments, but they felt like the bars of a cage. "Family has to make sacrifices," Eleanor concluded, smiling at her. "We all have to sacrifice for the ones we love." Imani dropped her fork. She was done. "I have to get back to work," she lied, pushing back from the table. "Thank you for dinner." She walked out of the house, leaving them with their ribs and their rationalizations. A few days passed in a tense quiet. Imani avoided the main house working late and communicating with her parents in brief texts. She was trying to regain her footing to focus on her work and her plan with Marcus. Then the letter arrived. It was in the stack of mail she retrieved from the shared mailbox, wedged between a utility bill and junk mail. It was from a bank she had never heard of, Premier Trust Financial. Her name, Imani Jackson, was printed clearly above her guest house address. Her heart began a heavy, uneven beat. This was not a pre-approval offer. It looked like a statement. Her hands trembled slightly as she tore the envelope open. A cold dread washed down her spine. This was not a mistake. She unfolded the letter. It was a credit card statement, a Visa signature card in her name. The balance due, $5,112.40. She felt physically sick. She scanned the list of charges, each line item a punch to the gut. Online wagering app $600. Denver nightclub VIP service $1,200. Luxury auto rental, Escalade $800. Charges from steakhouses, high-end menswear stores, all in Denver. All from the month before Malik decided to come home. Her breath hitched. He had not just borrowed. He had not just splurged. He had stolen her identity. He had used her social security number, her name, her good credit to finance his failed lifestyle. The rage came, then hot and blinding, eclipsing the shock. She crushed the paper in her fist and stalked out of the guest house. She burst into the main house without knocking. Malik was sprawled on the expensive living room sofa, controller in hand, eyes glued to a violent video game on the massive television. Digital gunfire filled the room. "You used my name." Her voice was terrifying, even to her. Malik jumped, fumbling the controller. "What? What are you talking about?" She threw the crumpled statement at his chest. "You opened a credit card in my name and spent $5,000. Are you insane?" Malik glanced at the paper, a flash of panic in his eyes, before it was replaced by his familiar sullen pout. He shrugged, a casual gesture that made Imani want to scream. "Oh," he said. "It's not a big deal. You have money, just pay it off. You always overreact." "Overreact?" Imani's voice was shaking with fury. "This is fraud, Malik. It is a felony. You are ruining my credit score. Marcus and I are trying to get approved for a house." Malik's face darkened, his casualness turning to ugly defense. He turned off the game and slowly stood up, trying to use his height to intimidate her. "You are so selfish. You always act like you are so much better than me. It's always about your money, your future. What about me? What about you?" Imani laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "You took care of yourself with my money." She pointed to the paper. "You are going to call that bank. Right now. You are going to confess what you did, or I am calling the police." Malik scoffed, a smug, ugly sound. "You won't," he sneered. "You wouldn't do that to your own brother." He shoved past her, brushing her shoulder hard, as he walked toward the kitchen for a soda, leaving her trembling in the middle of the living room. Imani did not follow him. She stood there, willing herself to breathe. Her anger was giving way to something colder, more terrifying. She sat on the sofa, the statement gripped in her hand, and she waited. Robert and Eleanor returned an hour later from a grocery run. They walked in smiling until they saw Imani's face. "Goodness, Imani," Eleanor said, setting a bag down. "What is wrong with you? You look like you've seen a ghost." Imani did not get up. She just looked at them. "Something worse," she said, her voice hollow. She placed the credit card statement on the coffee table in front of them. "Malik did this. He stole my identity." Eleanor put on her reading glasses. Robert leaned in. Imani watched her mother's hand fly to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. She watched her father's face harden. $5,000, Imani said. "It's a felony, you know." Eleanor was the first to speak, her voice trembling. "Oh, Imani, there must be some mistake. He didn't mean it. You know how he gets. He's in a bad place." "A bad place," Imani repeated. Mom, he planned this. He applied. He lied. This was not a mistake. It was a crime. Robert straightened up. He did not look at her. He stared at the paper, his jaw set, in an expression she knew too well. It was annoyance. Not at Malik, at her. You are making a big deal out of this, he said, his voice low and harsh. He's family. Imani felt as if she had been slapped. Are you kidding me? Just pay it, Robert ordered. Just this once. Pay it off and your mother and I will have a serious talk with him. We will handle it. The room seemed to tilt. They were not just defending him. They were not just excusing him. They were asking her to be complicit in a felony. They were asking her to swallow $5,000 in fraudulent debt plus interest to keep their illusion of a happy family intact. Are you listening to me? Imani's voice cracked, desperation and anger surging up. This isn't just money. This is my future. This is my credit score. Marcus and I are trying to buy a house. This could ruin us. Don't you talk about your brother like that? Eleanor burst into tears, the sobs immediate and dramatic. He made a mistake. Do you want him to go to jail? Is that what you want for this family? I want him to be held accountable, Imani yelled. Enough! Robert roared, his voice drowning out Eleanor's crying. He pointed a finger at Imani. You have a good job. You have savings. You can handle it. Stop causing trouble in my house. Imani stared at him, stunned. Causing trouble. She was the one causing trouble, not the identity thief, the victim. She stood up, her hands shaking so hard she could barely control them. They had chosen. Right in front of her, they had made their choice. They would always choose him. They would rather sacrifice her than force Malik to face a single meaningful consequence. She picked up the statement from the table. I understand, she whispered. She left the room, her mother's wails echoing behind her. Imani did not call the police. The thought of her own brother in handcuffs, of what that would do to her mother, was a line she still could not cross. But she did not pay the bill. She spent the next day, a day she was supposed to be finalizing a major campaign budget, locked in her guest house on the phone. She was routed through 6 different automated menus before she finally reached a human in the Premier Trust Financial Fraud Department. Yes, my name is Imani Jackson, she said, her voice hollow. My social security number is... She recited the 9 digits that Malik had stolen, feeling a wave of nausea. She explained the situation clearly, factually. That she had not opened the account, that the charges were fraudulent, that she knew who had done it. The questions were invasive, humiliating. Are you sure you did not authorize these payments? Are you willing to file a police report? This individual had access to your personal information. The call lasted over 2 hours. 2 hours of feeling like a suspect in her own violation. Then came the paperwork. Digital affidavits she had to sign, attesting under penalty of perjury that she was a victim. After she hung up with the bank, she made 3 more calls, one to Experian, one to Equifax, one to TransUnion. I need to place a freeze on my credit, she told each one, her voice robotic. She felt contaminated, as if she had to scrub her entire financial identity clean. The freedom she had worked so hard to build, her excellent credit score, her savings, all of it felt dirty, compromised by her own family. The consequences bled into her work almost immediately. She was distracted, her mind constantly replaying her father's words, just pay it. She was leading the biggest campaign of her career, a national launch for a new software client. This was her trial run for a promotion to senior strategist, a title that came with a significant raise, a title she desperately needed. In a team meeting on Wednesday, her boss Jordan Reed was reviewing the budget projections. Imani, he said, what's your contingency allocation for the 3rd quarter media buy? Imani stared at him. She had heard the words, but her brain could not assemble them. She was thinking about the $5,112. I'm sorry, Jordan, she stammered. Can you repeat that? The other strategists shifted in their chairs. Jordan, a sharp but fair man, narrowed his eyes, not in anger, but in concern. He moved on. Deja, can you take that? But the damage was done. Imani had fumbled. Later that day, Jordan stopped by her desk. "Imani, are you okay?" he asked, his voice low. "You seem unfocused. That's not like you. Is everything all right at home?" Shame washed over her, hot and immediate. "I'm fine, Jordan," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just a lot on my mind. It won't happen again." He nodded and walked away, but she knew he was not convinced. Her family's toxic chaos was no longer contained. It was here in her office, threatening the one part of her life she had kept separate, the one part that was truly hers. The final blow came that evening. Marcus called. He did not even say hello. "Imani, I just got the email," he said, his voice tight with a tension she had never heard before. "Our pre-approval for the mortgage was denied." Her heart stopped. It did not just sink, it stopped. "What?" she whispered. "Why? Our finances are perfect." "They said there is a severe fraud alert on your file," Marcus said, his voice rising. "And that your credit score dropped 80 points since last week. 80 points. Imani, what the hell is going on?" She broke. The dam of professionalism of the responsible daughter of the calm fiancé, it just shattered. She collapsed onto her small sofa and told him everything, the sobs choking her. The stolen identity, the $5,000, the confrontation, and her parents' reaction. "They told me to pay it," she cried. "They told me to stop causing trouble." There was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "He did this to you," he said. "He did this to us. And your parents, they just let him. They protected him." He took a deep breath. "Imani, I love you. But you have to get out of there. They are drowning you. And they are taking us down with them." After she hung up with Marcus, Imani felt a profound, terrifying loneliness. The people who were supposed to be her primary support system were the ones holding the knife. She scrolled through her contacts, her thumb hovering over one name, her mother's sister, Aunt Rose. She pressed call. Aunt Rose lived in Atlanta, a retired accountant, who had always been the family's sharp-tongued truth-teller. She picked up on the second ring. "Imani Jackson, it must be a bad day if you're calling your old auntie." Rose's voice crackled, warm but sharp. Imani tried to speak, but all that came out was a sob. "Auntie," she managed. And then, just like with Marcus, it all poured out. The $1,500 mortgage payment, Malik's return, the $800 jacket, the $5,000 fraud, the canceled mortgage application, and her parents' horrifying demand. Aunt Rose listened, her only interruption an occasional, or "Lord have mercy." When Imani finished, there was a long sigh on the line. "Child," Aunt Rose said, her voice heavy, "I am not one bit surprised. Your mother, Eleanor, God love her, has always treated that boy like a little king, ever since he was 10 years old and broke her prized crystal vase, the one her own grandmother gave her. You remember, she blamed the cat. She knew he did it, but she blamed the cat because the truth was too inconvenient." "And your father," Rose continued, "Robert just wants peace. He has always wanted peace, even if it costs him what's right. He will throw anyone under the bus to avoid a difficult conversation, especially with Malik." "They told me I was causing trouble," Imani whispered, wiping her eyes. "Listen to me, Imani," Aunt Rose said, her accountant's voice cutting through the static. "They do not do this because they love him more than you. They do it because he is weak and they think you are strong. They think you can take it. They see you as their foundation and they will pull bricks out of you to patch the holes in him, thinking you will not crumble. But just because you can take it does not mean you should." Imani held the phone, the words sinking in. "Just because you can does not mean you should." "You do not owe them your future," Aunt Rose said, her voice firm. "You do not owe them your sanity. Do not let your fire be put out just to keep them warm." They hung up. Imani sat in the quiet guest house, the silence feeling different. It was not empty. It was clear. For the first time in her life, the crushing weight of guilt had lifted, replaced by something new, something cold and hard and sharp. She was not guilty. She was angry. The call came 2 nights later. It was Robert. Family meeting, main house, now. He hung up before she could reply. Imani walked across the 50 yards of grass, her steps steady. The anger from her talk with Aunt Rose had solidified into a cold, hard resolve. She felt calm. She entered the living room. It was a scene of judgment. Robert stood by the fireplace. Eleanor sat on the sofa, wringing her hands, her face puffy from crying. Malik was in the armchair, pointedly looking at his phone, his leg bouncing with irritation. Imani knew why. The fraud department had frozen the fraudulent account, and her own credit freeze meant he could not open another. He was cut off. "We have a problem," Robert said. His voice was ice. He was looking directly at Imani, as if she, not Malik, was the source of all their trouble. "Another one," Imani said flatly. "Malik's debt," Robert said, ignoring her. "It is out of control again. He came clean. Another $10,000. From gambling apps and online shopping." Imani stared at him. $10,000. On top of the 5,000. "He is trying to get better," Eleanor pleaded from the sofa, her voice thin. "He just needs a little help, Imani. He needs a clean slate." Imani did not look at her mother. She looked at Malik. He was still staring at his phone, refusing to meet her eyes. "Explain yourself," Imani demanded, her voice echoing in the quiet room. "You are drowning this family. You threw away $10,000 you do not have, and I am supposed to fix it. Say something." Malik finally looked up, his eyes filled with a sullen, childish rage. "Why do you always act so high and mighty?" he sneered. "Acting like you're perfect. It's just money." "That is enough," Robert said. He took a step toward Imani, his frame towering. "You have a good job. You can afford it. We are your family. You will stop making this difficult." "Difficult?" Imani's voice cracked, the sheer absurdity of it breaking her calm. "He steals my identity. He racks up $15,000 in debt. Our mortgage application is denied, and I am making it difficult." She looked from her father's stony face to her mother's tear-streaked one. "Why am I always the one who has to pay? Why?" Robert's face turned a dark red. The composure was gone. He took another step, his finger jabbing the air in front of her face. "Because you are part of this family," he screamed, his voice roaring, shaking the pictures on the wall. "Either you help or you get out and never come back." The room went utterly silent. The echo of his shout hung in the air. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Malik had actually looked up, his eyes wide, a flicker of fear in them. Imani looked at her father. He was not yelling from a place of anger. He was yelling from a place of power. He had just used the last weapon he had, the final piece of leverage he held over her, a roof. He had finally said the quiet part out loud. Her value was not as a daughter. It was as an asset. Tears sprang to her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. She had sacrificed for this family. She had paid their mortgage. She had covered for her brother. She had put her own future on hold. And her reward was an ultimatum. Pay up or be homeless. She turned her gaze to Malik. He was already looking back down at his phone, the moment of drama having passed his indifference, a final sharp twist of the knife. "You do not even care," she whispered. She turned around. She did not say another word to Robert or Eleanor. She walked out the front door. She did not turn left to go back to her guest house. She turned right, walked down the driveway, and got into her car. Imani drove, her hands shaking so hard she had to grip the steering wheel at 10 and 2 like a teenager learning to drive. She did not go home. She did not go to Marcus's. She went to a brightly lit 24-hour coffee shop, the artificial cheer of the place a stark contrast to the cold void in her chest. She ordered a black coffee she would not drink and slid into a booth in the back corner. Then she called Kayla. Her best friend since college, Kayla was a nurse, pragmatic and fiercely loyal. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm. "Hey girl, you're up late." "Kayla," Imani whispered and her voice broke. That was all it took. The entire sordid story came pouring out. The $5,000 fraud, the $10,000 gambling debt, her parents' demand that she pay it, and her father's final echoing words. "He told me to get out, Kayla. He screamed at me, 'Get out and never come back.'" There was a silence on the other end of the line, so cold, Imani thought the call might have dropped. Then, Kayla spoke, her nurse's warmth gone, replaced by a blade of ice. "They are abusing you, Imani. That is not family. That is abuse. You are their financial hostage." "I don't know what to do," Imani sobbed, quiet, hiding her face in her hands. "Yes, you do," Kayla said, her voice firm. "You are going to do exactly what he told you to do. You are going to get out. You are leaving. Tonight. Right now. You come to my place. My apartment in downtown is tiny. It's a glorified box, but the sofa is yours for as long as you need it." Imani's breath hitched. Leave. Not just for a night. Leave for good. The idea was terrifying. And then she thought of her father's face, contorted in rage. She thought of Malik's indifferent stare at his phone. She thought of the mortgage application stamped denied. "Okay," Imani said, a single shaky breath. "Okay, I'll do it." The logistics clicked into place, her strategist's brain taking over, pushing the emotion aside for a moment. "How much is your rent?" Imani asked. $2,000 a month. If you take the couch, just split it with me. $1,000. Imani did the math, a bitter laugh escaping her. "That's only 2/3 of what I'm paying my parents for their mortgage." $1,000 a month. She would have to pay a security deposit to get on the lease and moving costs. It would drain her emergency fund. It would destroy the down payment she had been meticulously rebuilding. Her and Marcus's dream of buying that house, any house, would be pushed back maybe by 2 years, maybe more. Then the alternative flashed in her mind. Stay. Pay the $10,000. Pay the $5,000. Continue to pay the $1,500. Continue to watch Malik destroy her credit and her future while her parents held the door open for him. She realized staying would not just cost her money. It would cost her Marcus. It would cost her her career. It would cost her everything. "I'm on my way," Kayla said. "I'll pack an overnight bag for you from my place and meet you at your guest house in 20. "No," Imani said, a new strength in her voice. "Not tonight. They'll be there. They'll stop me." She told her about the wedding on Saturday. "They'll be gone all day. We do it then. We do it fast." "Good," Kayla said. "Good, I'll be there. And I'm bringing boxes." Imani hung up her hands, steadier. She made the next call. "Marcus." "Imani, are you okay? I've been texting you," he said, his voice frantic with worry. "I'm leaving." She said the words clean and final. "I'm leaving them, this Saturday. I'm moving in with Kayla." The sound that came from him was not a word. It was a profound, aching exhalation of relief. "Oh my God, Imani, thank God. Yes, of course, I'll be there. I'll get a truck. I'll rent a U-Haul. You just tell me when. I will handle the heavy lifting." One last call. This one made her stomach churn. She dialed her boss, Jordan Reed. He picked up immediately. "Reed." "Jordan," she said, trying to keep her voice professional. "I am so sorry to call this late. I have a severe family emergency. I am fine physically, but my living situation has become unsafe. I have to move this Saturday, secretly." There was no pause, no invasive questions. "I understand," Jordan said, his voice all business but kind. "What do you need from me? Do you need a car? Do you need muscle to move boxes?" Imani was stunned. "What? No, I just mean if I need to take a few personal days next week to get settled, can you?" "Imani?" Jordan interrupted gently. Do not worry about the project. It is in good shape because you did your job. You take care of yourself. Take Monday and Tuesday. Take the whole week if you need it. Just let HR know. We will cover for you. You do what you need to do. Imani hung up staring at the phone. Her boss, a man she barely knew outside of meetings, had just offered her more unconditional support in 30 seconds than her parents had in 29 years. The thought gave her the last piece of strength she needed. Saturday morning was gray and overcast. At 9 a.m., Imani watched from her window as her parents' sedan pulled out of the driveway. Robert was in his ill-fitting suit, Eleanor in a bright floral dress, Malik slouched in the back seat already on his phone. They were gone. At 9:31, the rescue team arrived. Kayla's hatchback was first pulling into the guest house driveway. Marcus was right behind her in a 10-foot U-Haul truck. Imani's eyes widened when a third car, Jordan's immaculate sedan, pulled in behind them. He got out holding a large cardboard box of coffee and a bag of donuts. Escape party is ready, he said with a small supportive smile. Imani felt a ridiculous urge to cry. You didn't have to come. Strategists stick together, Jordan said, simply handing her a coffee. Now where do we start? Imani unlocked the guest house door for the final time. The space that had been her sanctuary for 4 years, the place she had decorated and cared for, now felt like a prison cell she was finally breaking out of. There was no time for nostalgia. She moved with a numb mechanical efficiency. She was ruthless. She pointed. That, not that. She took only what was hers, what was untainted by the arrangement. Her clothes, her work computer and her personal laptop, a box with her personal documents, her passport, her birth certificate, her social security card. She checked it twice, a cold fear gripping her that Malik might have taken those too. They were safe. She took one small box of keepsakes which held a few college photos and the framed picture of her and Aunt Rose. She left the bed, she left the heavy dresser, she left the nightstands and the sofa. They were part of the lie, part of the $1,500 payment. She did not want them. They worked like a practice team. Marcus and Jordan, without a word, began tackling the boxes, their movements efficient. They were a quiet, powerful force moving her life out of that house piece by piece. Kayla took charge of the kitchen and bathroom, throwing toiletries, medicine, and essentials into duffel bags. She emptied the fridge, tossing old food into a trash bag. Every rip of the packing tape was a punctuation mark, a definitive end. This is over. In the middle of the packing, Kayla walked out of the bedroom holding the empty glass mason jar from the bookshelf. The tape was still on it, the words, "The Malik Emergency Fund," faded but clear. Are we taking this? Kayla asked, holding it up. Imani looked at the jar, the symbol of all her years of misplaced guilt and sacrifice. A bitter smile touched her lips. No, she said, her voice strong. Leave it right on the kitchen counter, as a reminder. Kayla nodded, a look of complete understanding on her face. She walked to the kitchen and placed the empty guilt jar directly in the center of the clean counter. In 1 hour and 47 minutes, the guest house was empty. It was hollow, sterile, echoing with the ghosts of her old life. Imani stood in the middle of the empty living room, the silence deafening. It was done. Marcus came up behind her and put a hand on her shoulder. Ready? He asked softly. She took one last look around. Ready. She walked back inside one last time. The U-Haul was running, its cargo door shut and locked. Kayla and Jordan were already in their cars, engines idling, ready to make a clean getaway. Imani stood at the empty kitchen counter, staring at the empty jar. She pulled a folded utility bill from her purse, flipped it over to the blank white back, and took a pen from her jacket. Her hand was shaking, not from fear or sadness, but from pure, unadulterated adrenaline. Her heart was pounding, a drumbeat of liberation. She thought of all the things she could write. You are cruel, selfish monsters. I hate you for what you did to me. You chose a criminal over your daughter. But she remembered Aunt Rose's voice. Clear, calm, factual. She thought of her father's scream. He had turned their relationship into a transaction. She would honor that. She would not give them emotion. She would give them a final invoice. She wrote 4 short, clean lines. Dear Mom and Dad, I am gone. Dad told me to get out, so I did. I have been paying your $1,500 mortgage payment. That payment will stop immediately. You will need to make other arrangements. I am no longer responsible for this family or for Malik's mistakes. I am done. She did not sign it with love. She did not sign it with your daughter. She just signed her name. Imani. She folded the piece of paper and propped it up against the base of the empty gilt jar. The 2 items on the counter said everything that needed to be said. She walked out and pulled the guest house door shut. She heard the click of the lock. She paused, looked at the key in her hand, and then dropped it onto the welcome mat. She climbed into the passenger seat of the U-Haul. Marcus was behind the wheel, his expression firm. He did not ask if she was okay. He just put the truck in drive. Kayla's car pulled out first. Jordan's followed. The U-Haul was the last in their small caravan. As they reached the end of the long driveway, as the truck's tires hit the pavement of the main road, Imani stared straight ahead through the windshield. She did not turn her head. She did not look at the main house where she grew up. She did not look at the empty guest house that had been her cage. A single tear, hot with 9 years of suppressed rage and a sudden sharp jolt of relief, rolled down her cheek. Marcus reached over and took her free hand, his grip strong and sure. Imani took a deep breath, the air in the truck cab tasting different. It tasted like freedom. A weight she had carried for her entire adult life, a crushing 1,000-pound obligation, had just been lifted from her shoulders. She was out. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of silence. Imani had settled into the rhythm of Kayla's downtown apartment. The small space felt more like a home than the guest house ever had. She and Marcus had resumed their house hunting, their conversations now filled with practical shared plans. The fraud investigation was ongoing, but Premier Trust Financial had frozen the account, and her credit score was already beginning the slow, painful process of recovery. She had taken the week off from work, just as Jordan had offered, and returned feeling focused, lighter, and in control. Then the silence broke. It was a Tuesday afternoon, right in the middle of a budget meeting. Her phone, which she had set to Do Not Disturb, began to vibrate on the table. It did not stop. It buzzed once, twice, a third time. A series of texts. She glanced down. It was her mother. Imani, the bank called. They said we missed the payment. Imani. What did you do? They are talking about foreclosure. Why did you stop paying the mortgage? Call me. Now. Imani stared at the screen, her blood running cold, but her hand was steady. She silenced the phone and slid it back into her purse. She would not be handling this. When the meeting finished an hour later, she had 7 missed calls. The moment she stepped into the hallway, the phone rang again. This time she answered. She put the phone to her ear and said nothing. Imani, oh, thank God. Imani, what are you doing? Her mother's voice was unrecognizable, a high-pitched, hysterical shriek. The bank called. They said we are late on the payment. They are threatening foreclosure. Imani, foreclosure. You have to pay it. You have to call them right now and pay it. Imani stood by the window looking down at the busy street below. She felt strangely calm, detached, as if she were watching a scene from a movie. I don't have to do anything, Mom, she said, her voice quiet, flat. What? Eleanor shrieked. What are you talking about? We will lose the house, our home, everything we have. You cannot let this happen to us. You cannot. I am not letting anything happen, Imani said, her voice turning as cold as the glass she was looking through. I am not involved. This is not my problem. But it is your... Dad told me to get out. Imani interrupted, her words sharp and precise. He gave me an ultimatum, so I got out. I am no longer responsible for your choices, for his choices, or for Malik's choices. I am done. He didn't mean it like that, honey. Eleanor was sobbing now, the manufactured tears that used to work so well. He was just upset. Please, Imani. Your brother, he's trying, he really is. He just needs time. Family has to sacrifice. We have to help him. The mention of Malik's name snapped the last thread of Imani's patience. The image of him on the couch staring at his phone while her father screamed at her flashed in her mind. No, Imani said, her voice final. I am done cleaning up his messes. I am done being the sacrifice. You made your choice, both of you. You chose him. Now you get to live with that choice. She paused and then added the last necessary words. Good luck. She pressed the end call button. She stood there for a long moment, the phone in her hand. Her heart was pounding, but she was not sad. She was not guilty. She felt nothing but a cold, hard relief. She blocked her mother's number. Then she blocked her father's. A few days later, her phone rang with a call from Atlanta. It was Aunt Rose. Well, child, Aunt Rose's voice was dry. It seems you finally kicked over the hornet's nest. You heard, Imani said, sitting down on her new sofa bed. Oh, I heard, Aunt Rose snorted. Your mother called me crying a river talking about how you abandoned them in their time of need. The whole situation up in Colorado Springs is a 5-alarm mess. Imani listened, saying nothing as her aunt laid out the consequences. Malik, unsurprisingly, had not changed. He was still sleeping until noon, still refusing to look for a job, and still somehow finding ways to spend money they did not have. The finances, as Imani had always suspected, were worse than her parents had let on. Her $1,500 payment had not just been help. It had been the critical load-bearing wall of their entire financial structure. Without it, they were insolvent. The bank was not bluffing. With the $10,000 gambling debt and the $5,000 fraud now linked to their address, they were a massive liability. The foreclosure process was real, and it was moving fast. But that's not the best part, Aunt Rose said, her voice laced with a dark irony. There's more, Imani asked, exhausted. Oh yes, your parents are at each other's throats, fighting like cats and dogs from what Eleanor tells me. It seems your father has finally realized that his golden boy is a worthless drain. Robert is apparently furious, blaming Eleanor for coddling him rotten for 27 years and wants Malik thrown out of the house. And what does Mom say to that? Imani asked. Oh, she's giving as good as she gets. She's blaming Robert for pushing you away. She told him you were the only stable income this family had and that his temper blew it for all of us. She's furious that she has to get a job. Imani felt a bitter, hollow ache. So they don't miss me. Aunt Rose's voice softened for the first time. Listen to me, Imani. They aren't fighting because they miss you. They are fighting because the ATM walked away and is no longer dispensing cash. You did the right thing. You saved yourself. Back at the office, Imani was a different person. The fog of distraction was gone, replaced by a laser focus. The anxiety about her family, a constant low-level hum that had been her companion for years, had vanished. She was free. She threw every ounce of that new energy into the national campaign. She worked late, not because she was hiding, but because she was inspired. She tore down their initial concepts and rebuilt them, her ideas sharper, more confident. She anticipated the clients' questions before they asked them. She managed her team with a new, calm authority. She was no longer just handling her job, she was commanding it. The final presentation was a week later in the main boardroom with the client and all the agency partners. Imani led the presentation herself. She spoke with clarity and passion. She did not stumble. She did not doubt. She laid out a strategy that was not just safe, but bold. When she finished, the room was silent. The client's CEO just stared at her. Then he smiled. That, he said to the room, is exactly what I've been waiting to hear. The project was approved on the spot. The next day, Jordan Reed called her into his office. He had a small smile on his face. Imani, sit down, he said. He gestured to the chair. I just got off the phone with the client. They were, to put it mildly, blown away by your presentation. I'm glad it went well, Imani said, trying to keep her own smile in check. It went better than well, Jordan said. They specifically requested that you and only you manage their account directly. They are doubling their media buy for the next quarter. The partners have already agreed. He leaned forward, the smile widening. Welcome to the senior strategist position, Imani. It is long overdue. Imani's hands clasped together in her lap, her knuckles white. She had done it. The title, the raise, the respect. She felt a sudden, powerful wave of emotion so strong it almost knocked the breath out of her. This was not a gift. This was not luck. This was not something her family had allowed her to have. This was hers. She had earned it. The bonus and the significant pay increase that came with the title flashed in her mind. It was not fix Malik's debt money. It was buy our house money. She had succeeded. Not because of them, but in spite of them. Her revenge was not a screaming match. It was not a lawsuit. Her revenge was the quiet, undeniable, and brilliant fact of her own success, a success she had built entirely on her own. Thank you, Jordan, she said, her voice clear and steady. I won't let you down. Imani's act of blocking her parents' numbers did not stop the attempts. For a week her blocked calls folder filled up. But after her mother's final hysterical voicemail, the calls from their numbers stopped. The attack when it came was from a new front, a direct message on social media. It was from Malik. Imani opened it, her stomach tightening, prepared for one last wave of toxicity. You ruined my life, the message began. You think you're so much better than us. You abandoned this family. Mom and Dad are losing the house and they are kicking me out. Kicking me out. I have nowhere to go. This is your fault. You did this to us. You are a selfish bitch. I hope you're happy. Imani read the words and a strange, profound calm settled over her. She waited for the guilt. She waited for the familiar, agonizing pull of responsibility, the urge to fix it, to make it better. Nothing came. She felt no anger. She felt no guilt. She felt only a distant clinical pity for the 27-year-old man on the other side of the screen, a man so broken he could not see the destruction he had caused. He had stolen her identity, racked up thousands in debt, and applauded while their father screamed at her. And yet in his mind she was the villain. She did not reply. She did not type out the long, scathing list of his own failures. She simply moved her cursor, clicked the block button, and erased him from her life. It was as simple as changing a password. The silence that followed was vast and clean. In that silence, other voices became clearer. Kayla's checking in every day. You good girl, not asking for anything, just offering. Marcus's, his voice steady as they planned their finances. We'll build it back up together. It's just money. Jordan's offering her mentorship. You have a good strategic mind, Imani. Let's put it to use. And Aunt Rose's, I'm proud of you, child. You chose you. This was her new foundation. Not a crumbling, toxic pit of obligation, but a solid ground, built by people who had chosen to be in her life, who respected her, who celebrated her. She sat in Kayla's apartment, listening to the city sounds, and finally understood. Setting a boundary was not an act of aggression. It was an act of self-defense. It was not a wall she built to punish them. It was a line she drew to protect herself. For her entire life, her family had used guilt as a leash, making their happiness their stability, and their very survival her responsibility. By walking away, she had not cut the leash. She had simply let go of her end. She had reclaimed her power, her money, and her future. 6 months later. The Colorado sun streamed through the window of a small North End bungalow. Imani held a paintbrush, her hand steady as she applied a coat of quiet harbor gray to the wall. You missed a spot, Marcus said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. I did not, she laughed, leaning back against him. It was their house. It was not the large 4-bedroom home they had first dreamed of. It was smaller, a 2-bedroom with a tiny yard, and it needed a lot of work. The credit drop from Malik's fraud had set them back, but her promotion and the subsequent raise had accelerated their new plan. This house was the result. It was theirs. The mortgage was in both their names. Imani's career was no longer just a job, it was a vocation. As a senior strategist, she was now leading her own team, mentoring the junior members, her ideas shaping major accounts. She had found her voice at work, a confidence that had been impossible when she was constantly being drained by her family. She had heard news of her old life in small, sad pieces from Aunt Rose. Her parents had in fact lost the house. They had failed to make the payments and, facing foreclosure, were forced into a short sale. The home she grew up in, the house her money had paid for, was sold for a loss. Robert and Eleanor had moved into a small 2-bedroom rental apartment across town. According to Aunt Rose, the fighting had not stopped. Their resentment, now without a buffer, had poisoned the air between them. Malik had indeed been kicked out. With no one left to enable him, he had been forced to face a cold, hard reality. He was last Imani heard crashing on a friend's sofa and working a temp job at a warehouse loading boxes. He still told anyone who would listen that his successful sister had ruined his life. A car door slammed outside, pulling Imani from her thoughts. A moment later, Kayla and Jordan walked in carrying 3 large pizza boxes. "The work crew has arrived," Kayla announced, setting the pizzas on the drop cloth in the middle of the floor. "And I brought the beverage budget," Jordan said, holding up a 6-pack of craft beer. They all sat on the floor, surrounded by paint cans and rollers, eating pepperoni pizza out of the box, laughing as Kayla recounted a story about a difficult patient. Imani looked at this scene. Her fiancé, his shirt splattered with paint, her best friend who had given her a lifeline, her mentor who had shown her respect. This was it. This was the future she had chosen. She looked out the window of her own home. She was not the useful daughter. She was not the family ATM. She was just Imani. She had chosen herself. She had chosen her own peace. She had chosen her own complicated, beautiful life. She realized her revenge was never about watching them fail. They had managed that all on their own. Her revenge was the quiet, undeniable, joyful act of living well. It was the sound of her friends laughing in her new living room. It was the feel of Marcus's hand in hers. It was the deep, unshakable knowledge that family was not always the blood you were born with. Sometimes it was the people who saw your value, respected your boundaries, and chose to build a future alongside you. She took a bite of pizza, smiled at Marcus, and for the first time in her entire life, she felt completely and totally free. True family isn't about obligation, it's about respect. My healing began when I stopped setting myself on fire to keep others warm. I learned that my self-worth is not defined by their needs, but by my own boundaries. The most powerful act of love is often the one you give to yourself.